Once upon a time, in the village of Umwata, a little village in the eastern part of Nigeria, there lived a king who had no heir or even a child of his own. He sat outside his hut one evening with his hands on his chin, thinking about who would take care of his kingdom if he passed on. Rumors had circulated around the village that the king had used his wife's womb to secure the throne of Umi, as he himself was not the rightful heir to the throne. "Ada," he called to his wife, who was sleeping in her chamber while he was outside contemplating what to do about his wife's barrenness. Although he kept calling and she couldn't hear him, he had to send one of the guards with him to fetch the queen. She emerged shortly and rubbed her eyes, yawning. It was obvious she hadn't slept enough. "My king, here I am. You sent for me?" she said groggily. The king asked her to sit down, and then he began. "Rumors have been spreading throughout this kingdom that I used my unborn children as sacrifices to secure the throne of Umwata. This has troubled me deeply, and I'm growing old. I want to hear the cry of a baby in this palace and have an heir to my throne," he said, stroking his beard. The queen was silent for a moment. Even though the news hadn't reached her yet, she was saddened by her barren state. "My king, I understand how you feel. I also long to hear the cry of a baby. Is there nothing we can do?" she asked, tears already welling up. "First thing tomorrow morning, before the cock crows, we will journey together to the neighboring village to find a solution. I heard they have the best native doctors," he said. "As you wish, my king." The queen bowed and left for her chambers to sleep. The king sat outside for a while, then he also went into his chambers to sleep. The queen couldn't sleep as she kept imagining the solution to her problem. She wanted to be the one waking her husband to set out on the journey to the neighboring village in search of a solution, taking one of the guards with them. Early in the morning, before the cock crowed, the queen had already prepared herself. She went straight to the king, woke him up, and they both prepared. Without taking anyone else, they disguised themselves as villagers and left the village for the neighboring village. They journeyed for 2 days, passing through the forest and crossing streams before finally reaching the village. When they arrived at the kingdom of Ajofo, the sacred place of the gods, the birthplace of Ikna, one of the ancient gods, they still disguised themselves as villagers to avoid detection. With the help of one of the guards they walked with, they found out where the native doctor stayed. They waited until night, then visited the native doctor. Before they could enter the hut, a voice thundered outside, "King Amadi, welcome to Ajofo," causing the queen to tremble. The native doctor appeared behind them. He called the king by another name, King Namdi, and when he turned, he almost startled. But that wasn't acceptable as a king, although the queen shivered in fear. "You came to seek the solution to your problem," the voice said, while the king nodded in approval. The native doctor asked them to sit, but before sitting, the king knew what to do, which was putting money in the bowl meant for the gods. "You will not be able to have an heir to your throne, but the gods will give you 3 children and all of them will be females. You will need to marry them off when they are ripe. One of them will give birth to a male child." Although the king was sad, he knew the gods were wise, and everything that came from there was good. The queen was given something from the calabash to drink. "Go, your problem is solved," the man finally said as they both left with mixed feelings, whether to be happy that their prayers were answered or be sad. They went back to the village just in time to debunk the rumor that the king had run away because his wife could not give him an heir. Months passed, and the queen's stomach started growing, and the villagers started noticing it themselves. The rumors spread that the queen was finally pregnant, but this time it was no longer a rumor. The queen was also excited to walk around the village so everyone could notice she was pregnant, although she was not happy that it was not going to be a boy. Months passed again, and she was due for delivery. As the queen, the midwife had to come to the palace and help her deliver the baby. The first baby came out. It was a girl. Shortly after, the second and third came out, also all girls, just as the native doctor had said. Although the king was not happy when he was told, he had to do what the native doctor had commanded, waiting for them to come of age and then giving them out for marriage in order to retain his kingdom. So he had no choice but to accept the children. Together, he and his queen trained the children, and despite the rumors still flying around that the king still could not provide an heir, the villagers began to accept the children bit by bit until they could no longer say anything about the princesses who had grown so beautiful that suitors started trooping in to ask for the princesses' hands in marriage. The king wanted all his daughters to marry princes, and that was the reason he rudely declined the suitors who wanted to marry his daughters. One of his daughters, Amaka, who was the eldest, spent all her time eating, which made her too fat and ugly. Even when the king scolded her countless times, she still did not want to listen. She kept eating to the point of having many meals a day. The king even had to call a meeting in his household to address the issue. But Princess Amaka turned a deaf ear to her father's orders. Her father was disappointed in her and made sure she stayed inside the house, so she wouldn't chase her sister's suitors or bring shame to him. She was not allowed to go out like the other princesses, but she didn't mind. Instead, she continued to spend her time eating, trying to forget her problems by overeating. In the kingdom, it was a law that if the eldest child remained unmarried, the rest would also stay single. This situation was a problem for the other princesses and the king because he didn't know how to get his daughter married. All the suitors rejected her and even made fun of her, calling her a pig. However, no one dared to say it to her face to avoid the king's anger. It was a matter of concern because if the princesses didn't get married, there would be no heir, and the kingship would have to pass to another household. This really made the king worried because the kingship was passed on to him by his father, and it would be a thing of shame for it to leave his household. It would look as if he is not brave enough or capable of commanding respect in his own household. Every night he sat outside the hut thinking about what to do about his daughter's situation. Then an idea came. He knew what to do. In the morning, even without calling his advisor for counsel, he ordered the town crier to announce to the whole village that he would give out lands, cows, and even half of his kingdom to anyone who would agree to marry his daughters. It was a plan he made by himself, and when the day came, many suitors came from far and near because they had it in mind to get married to one of the beautiful princesses. Soon, the news circulated that even princes from other kingdoms came to grace the occasion. Although the offer was too good to be true, they still went to find out for themselves. Some did not come for the princesses but for the huge offers the king had placed on the head of his princesses. They wanted riches for themselves, especially the poor ones, and did not even care a bit about the princesses. When it was time for the king to speak, he started, "My people, I greet you. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. But it is quite unfortunate that you will have to marry one of my daughters at a time." Hearing this, some of the suitors began to murmur some words to themselves as he continued. "I am giving out only one of my daughters here in marriage, which is Amaka, my eldest daughter. As tradition demands, she needs to get married before her sisters. Like I have said, I will be giving out lands, cows, and even half of my kingdom to anyone who marries my daughter Amaka," he said as the princess revealed herself, causing a lot of suitors to disperse as they cursed the king, although not to his hearing. Not a single person was left. They went home one after the other, leaving the king and his family in the village square. It was an embarrassing thing that the king bowed his head in shame. Some of the princes came with their fathers. One of the fathers even scolded the king for insulting them that way. "Did we tell you we came all the way here to ask for your ugly daughter's hand in marriage? Or is it that we don't have anything else to do?" He screamed at the top of his voice while the other kings supported him and even hailed him for his bravery to stand up to the king. The king was forced to get up and speak to his daughter. Amaka, imagine the shame you have brought to me because of your eating habits. The fierce lion has become a cub today because of you. I am very much ashamed of you and will not hesitate to give you away, even to a cripple if he luckily comes asking for your hand in marriage." He didn't finish what he was saying because he was really heartbroken that even his greatest plan did not work out. Nobody could accept to marry his daughter, even with all the promises he had made to the suitors. It meant it was no longer about money. Nothing else could be done in the king's sight. The other princesses started protesting that they were getting old, and their elder sister was chasing their suitors away. They might grow old without getting married. All these really disturbed the king, and he kept praying to the gods to make a way. Meanwhile, he had ordered the princess to be locked up and fed once a day so that she would reduce and become slim like her sisters. He said to one of the guards, "Make sure you lock her up in her room. She is not allowed to go anywhere or talk to anyone until I see an improvement. I am no longer going to tolerate and accommodate the constant shame she keeps bringing to me and the rest of the family." The guards did what he commanded and locked her in her room. The king was not happy about what he did. He cried at night when everyone was asleep. It was just the only way he could secure the throne. Amaka, on the other hand, started noticing she was not becoming any younger and needed to do something about her situation. In order to help herself and her father, she had to move out from her father's house to her husband's house. She saw him one night on the balcony crying while he was just walking around the palace, exercising to see if she could slim down. Even though he did not notice, someone had seen him. Princess Amaka was sad that it was because of her it happened. In her own path, she needed to do something about herself if she wanted to get married. She started taking anything she could lay her hands on to lose weight. She even started eating once a day and sometimes refused to eat even when the maids brought food for her, against her father's wish. Her sisters had ordered the guards to stop monitoring her, saying they would make sure she ate once, although they were just looking out for their sister. She did this for a while, but instead of losing weight, she was adding more weight, making it even more difficult for her to walk. She could not go anywhere anymore. She was even carried around the palace whenever she needed to walk. It felt as if she did not do anything about her situation. She once attempted suicide but was saved by her favorite maid, Adayabi. She asked for advice from her favorite maid, who told her that her mother is good at preparing mixtures for people who want to lose weight. In her words, she says, "My mother is good at preparing any mixture that can lead to weight loss. If you permit me, I will go and ask her to prepare something for you, and you will slim down in weeks," Adayabi said with so much confidence. The princess was desperate at the moment and could do anything just to lose weight and be fit like her sisters in order to attract suitors and eventually get married. She did not have a choice but to spend money on getting the mixture, which did not work after taking it for weeks with no improvement. She abandoned it and accepted her fate. Every time the king came to see if there was any improvement, he found her fatter than before. Though he said nothing to her, she could see the disappointment written all over his face. At times, after leaving her chambers, the king would sigh with tears dripping from his eyes. He was disappointed that he could do nothing about his daughter's situation. She would sit in her room and cry, rejecting anything brought before her. The king also ordered for her to be locked inside her room and not allowed access anywhere around the palace, especially when visitors were around. The other princess would be introduced to the visitors, but she would just sit in her room all alone. Except sometimes the maid would come and keep her company. The king felt it was the best thing to do for her to lose weight faster, even when he could not see any improvement. He kept believing that it would happen someday, or it was just the God's way of punishing him for a sin he did not know about. First, the villagers were mocking him for not having a child, but then he became an instrument of mockery for having an overweight daughter. The villagers would show her to their children when they misbehaved, and they would cry and run for their dear lives. Princess Amaka loved dancing and listening to the beat of the melodious drums played in the village. It made her happy, and she would swing her waist to the beats, forgetting everything bothering her. Her father knew she loved dancing, but he ordered everything to be taken away from her to enable her to concentrate on her weight loss journey, even at her detriment. This made the princess cry herself to sleep every day, to the extent that she even went ahead to break the mirrors at home. It was time for the New Yam festival, and to the princess, it meant a time of dancing and listening to good rhythms coming from the ojin. The festival was to last for 3 days, and the princess had prepared herself to open the window, peeping and dancing to the beats, which made her so excited. It was the first day of the festival, and her father had allowed her to leave her room as long as she did not come near the village square. And she could walk although she did not lose weight. He didn't want anyone to see her. She agreed to it, and on the first day of the festival everything was in order. The princess would go far from the village square where no eyes would see her and dance to the beat of the drum until she was satisfied. Then she would go back home happily without letting anyone see her. She did it consistently, making sure that no eyes could see her, especially people from the village, so that it would not reach the king's ears. Not even her sisters knew about this. Princess Amaka ensured that no one else knew her little secret. Although the king had seen her coming back into the palace once and asked why she left amidst his orders, she explained she was somewhere around the palace walking and jogging to lose weight. Speaking of losing weight, the king had to let her be since it was what he wanted. "Where have you been going since the start of the festival?" her most trusted maid asked her one day while she bumped into her returning from her usual routine, sweating. Princess Amaka looked left and right. No one was in sight. She covered her maid's mouth, signaled her to follow her inside her room, then shut the door. "Don't let anyone else hear that I have been leaving the palace, so it won't reach the king's ears," she said almost in a panic. Then she smiled shyly, swinging herself from left to right. "I can't wait to hear this gist of yours. Is there someone always taking you away from the palace? If there is, it is even a thing of joy as the kingdom is expecting it," the maid said as she noticed the princess's expression changed and she kept a sad look. "It's fine. If you don't want to talk about it, my princess, just don't stay out that late again. You know it's the festive period, and the king might come back early from the village square and find you." "I don't want to lose my job," she said almost in a whisper. Princess Amaka did not say anything for a while. Then she said, "I have been far away from the outskirts of the village, dancing and making myself happy since the gods do not want me to be happy," she said, smiling. The maid had placed her hand on her chin, ready to listen to everything the princess had to say. "Oh, I had forgotten you love dancing to the rhythm of the ojin. Let me pretend I'm the drummer, so you can dance right now." Hearing it, the princess became so excited as she started dancing, while the maid mimicked the sound of the ojin. Bam, bam, bam. The princess swung her waist, completely forgetting about everything that was disturbing her until the maid stopped the beat, making her realize, "Ah, that was beautiful. I did not know you could mimic the ojin so well," the princess said, breathing heavily. And as she wanted to say something, her father, the king, knocked at the door. "Open this door, Amaka." There was complete silence as the princess rushed to open the door. The maid stood head down, placing her 2 hands on her back. "What is that sound I'm hearing? Instead of concentrating on how to lose weight and take this shame away from me, you are busy disturbing the peace of this palace." He scolded Princess Amaka, who had just remembered her predicament as tears started dripping from her eyes. The king could not stand to see her cry, so he left, shutting the door, resulting in a bang. "My princess, please stop crying. You are not bad the way you are. Any man that values you will not hesitate to marry you," her maid said as the king left, placing her hand on the princess's shoulder and trying to talk her out of her worries. "What haven't I done to lose weight? Why is my father blaming me as if I'm the cause of all this? And why have the gods refused to listen to my cry at least for once and make me slim like my sisters?" she said, crying her eyes out while her maid did not have anything else to do but to console her. "I believe you will find someone soon, my princess. her maid said. Then the princess suddenly remembered that she had just returned from dancing to the Ojin. The king had not noticed what she was wearing, as she was almost dressed like one of the dancers in the land. Thank goodness, he did not see what I was wearing. I will really need to be careful next time, she said, pulling out the cloth. The next morning was not any better. It was the second day of the festival. On the second day, the princesses were to appear before the village square to get accustomed to the culture of their land, and also see the able men of the community wrestling so that they will have in mind the ones they will get married to. The other princesses had dressed in their best attire, and Princess Amaka followed suit. She knew about the custom and had to dress up in order to go with the king to the village square. But when she was done and came outside to tell the king, he said something that broke her into 1,000 pieces. You will only make the people mock me at the village square, and there might be no festival today because of you. Can't you see how beautiful your sisters look? It is because of you they will not be able to pick a suitor today. Just go inside and do something about yourself, he said it with rage. The queen wanted to interfere but could not say anything as the king had the final say. Nothing could change his mind. Princess Amaka ran to her room, tears streaming down her face. She tore off every adornment she had worn, collapsed to the floor, and blamed the gods for her misfortune.